Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad you can join us tonight for this webinar. My name is Rich Shortall. I'm the Executive Coordinator of Fire Safe Marin. The webinar tonight is really what we're calling a workshop. And this workshop is an opportunity for residents of Marin to hear about the type of work that has been taking place for wildfire prevention within the area that they live in. This is all part of a larger program from the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority, which has 5 different zones. Tonight, the zone we'll be featuring is Novato. Novato's done a lot of great work. We're really excited about it. The theme for all of us has been adaptation to wildfire. That's the reality we all face. And I think you're going to hear that a lot of great work has been done by Novato. There will be an opportunity for you to ask questions. The way to do that is at the bottom of your screen. There's a function in there, which is the Q&A, question and answer. Just click on that and you can type in your question. And then at the end of the presentation, we'll respond to your questions. So with that said, I'd like to introduce Battalion Chief John Dicochea from the Novato Fire Department. We're really happy to have him here tonight. John, welcome.
Thank you, Rich, and thanks for having me here. Thanks for inviting me. So it looks like a couple familiar names on the list here of participants. So I'm really excited to see members of the community participating in this. So I want to start with a short presentation. I've got about 8 or 9 slides to really highlight some of the good work that we've been doing here with the Measure C funds here within the Novato Fire Protection District. So let me go ahead and start this slideshow presentation. So talking a little bit about the Novato Fire District Vegetation Management Program, and it's really kind of a few different aspects of the program. We've got a wildfire mitigation specialist team, and I think a lot of the folks in the community have met our wildfire mitigation specialist. We've got currently 5 wildfire mitigation specialists and 1 wildfire mitigation specialist supervisor, and she kind of runs that program. So that program really there's 4 components to the program. The first component is going out and doing a roadside assessment where we just drive by a house and we might snap a picture from the street of the front yard, the front of the house. And if we notice something that needs attention, we circle it, we highlight it, and then we just mail that to the resident with contact information. The hope is always to get the resident to call us back and ask us for a full home assessment. It usually takes about 45 minutes. We schedule it whenever it's convenient for the resident. We go out there and we do a full 360 around the house and the yard looking for any wildfire threats, whether it's home hardening issues or it's vegetation management in the yard. And then we have a discussion with the resident and we try to prioritize some of those items. At the same time, we discuss 2 of our programs that I think have been extremely beneficial in reducing the fire risk within Novato Fire District's boundaries. And the first one is a vegetation management matching grant. It's 50 cents on the dollar up to $1,000. And then the second one is a home hardening matching grant. And that one is 50 cents on the dollar up to $5,000. So we discuss those options and hopefully we can put some money back in the pockets of the residents if they're doing some of this work so they can continue to do work. And the goal is to incentivize them to continue to do work in their yards, on their homes, and on their properties. This year, we've actually got another program, which I think has been really successful for us. I know Fire Safe Marin, MWPA have a chipper program, but Novato Fire had some funding from last work plan, and we actually started our own chipper program. So Dan Russo, one of our wildfire mitigation specialists, has been running that program. And we really want to put it back on the neighborhoods. So we call it a neighborhood chipper program. So we ask the neighborhoods to organize their own chipper days. So they do all the work. The neighbors get together, they do all the tree trimming, they do all the cutting, they put all the stuff out on the curbside, and then they call up Dan Russo, and then he will schedule one of our contractors to go out there and chip the stuff up and haul it away. So it's been extremely successful in some of our smaller communities. Mike Swayze, our vegetation management manager, has been hard at work with some of the MWPA funds, creating some evacuation route planning, some education, some fuel breaks. And then along with that, myself and one of our front office administrative assistants have been busy with public outreach programs. So just trying to notify the public and keep them informed through social media platforms and other ways. I've already mentioned our wildfire mitigation specialist team, but they really focus on the important things around the home and around your yard. They do complete home assessments, and we call them assessments because we're out there trying to educate the public. So we really want to assess your home, your property, and, provide you some really good information. And then, of course, we also talked about the matching grants. The chipper days, year to date, we've shipped up about 450 yards of material. So that's, shipping the stuff up, getting it in the truck, and actually hauling it away. And we're trying to get all this vegetation outside, out in the front yard, and then we will pick it up, chip it up, and then haul it to the landfill or recycle center. Where from there, we don't want to broadcast it on the people's yards or somebody else's yard, because if there's some invasive species of plants, we don't want to spread it throughout the community. So, and then evacuation clearing. If you look at this slide here, this is actually a road in Black Point, which is off Highway 37. 37 is a neighborhood that we've identified as having one way in, one way out. So one of the biggest hurdles for us is that there is a lot of vegetation and a lot of it's overgrown. So a lot of these roads, we could not get a fire engine through. So Mike's done some really, really good work in trying to clear some of the evacuation routes. So now we can actually make access into these neighborhoods, and they can get out in case of a fire. Another example of that, again, just doing more really, really good work. This is a dead tree down at, I believe this is in Pacheco Valley. And, we had to hire a crane to get in there and actually remove this tree and chip it up and haul it away. The fuel breaks that Mike's been doing have been really good. It's all kind of strategic based on the fuel models, based on the vegetation, the slope, the aspect. So just going in there and trying to create some fuel breaks with, a lot of the times it's mechanical equipment, but most of the time we're actually using goats. And you'll see here in this next slide, this is an example of using goats. So we use them for annual maintenance, and we use them for fuel breaks. So on the left side, you see the gas powered equipment, which we're not trying to use. We're trying to use less of it. And then on the right side, you'll see these little happy goats that are just going out there and eating away 24/7. So a little more efficient. And then I think this is the last slide. So one of the other things that we've done is really reaching out to the public and really publicizing some of this. And we've got an outreach campaign to reach out to the public and have them sign up for our vegetation management grants, our home assessments. We really want the public to be engaged. So if you drive throughout the city of Novato, or even some of the outlying areas, if you drive downtown on Grant Street, you'll see a lot of our banners downtown on Grant Street. You see big poster size signs throughout the city, and then we've got these big yard signs. The other thing we've done is we want to get buy-in from the community. So we've got these small yard signs. So when we go out and do a home assessment, we offer to put these small kind of real estate size signs in people's yards so that their neighbors know that they've had a full assessment. And hopefully we can stimulate some conversations with the neighbors and get the neighborhood involved. So we're doing that. And one of the things we started doing is actually reaching out to the public, both in Spanish and English. So a lot of our materials we're going to translate to Spanish. And then next year we're looking at creating a demonstration garden at Station 63 on San Marin Drive. And then Mike is working on some prescribed fire planning. And then we're also working with Marin County Parks and Open Space to really maintain a lot of the fire roads. As we know, we've got a lot of open space throughout the fire district, and a lot of us enjoy some of those trails and those roads. But we also need them to defend, fires in case there's a fire in the open space. So we are working with Marin County Parks so that we can maintain those roads. We've got a really good partnership with them. So a really, really good project. And then Mike has been working on some of the eucalyptus groves throughout the fire district and kind of converting those back to native habitat. So a lot of work, a lot of time is being put back into the community. Very, very excited about that. And we'll continue doing exactly what we're doing. All right, let me stop sharing.
I think you want to hit, there you go. That's
there
great.
we go. Okay, took me a few seconds here. So,
well, thank you,
right.
John. Well, a lot of really exciting stuff going up there in Novato, like in much of Marin. One question I had, all the terrain in Marin is a little bit different. So some of the area in a place like Sausalito is quite a bit different than what we're finding in Novato. What would you say on the home evaluations, number one problem that you're encountering in Novato?
I think one of the biggest things is, vegetation real close to the homes, and we call that zone zero. It's 0 to 5 feet from your home. That's one of the biggest things that we're struggling with, because a lot of folks don't want to just go through and pull the vegetation out. We've got a lot of residents that say, we planted those juniper bushes when we bought this house 40 years ago, and we really don't want to remove them. But as we've seen in other fires, that's a kind of that critical zone, that 0 to 5 zone, 0 to 5 feet, zone zero. So that's one of the things we run into quite a bit.
No, that's great. Zone zero is sort of the new mantra, I think, nowadays. And
Yeah,
I think we're going to see a lot of regulations coming from the state that is, we're going to take work in that area very seriously going forward. The grant program is very exciting. One question that I know has come up in other places is an individual eligible for grants both from the Novato Fire District and the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority?
and the short answer is yes. So I know that MWPA has their own set of guidelines for their grants, but in talking to Jennifer and a few folks over at MWPA, they are eligible for both grants, as long as they qualify under their criteria and ours also. So they can actually, get both grants. The other thing I'll add, Rich, is that, the folks here in Novato, they're eligible for our grants from Novato Fire District every fiscal year. So for example, if they did a lot of vegetation management work in March of 22, they qualify again after July 1st to apply for another vegetation management grant. So not everybody has, the funds available. So sometimes they got to break up a big project into several smaller projects and spread it over 3 or 4 years.
Gotcha. Well, that's a good strategy. It's great that the assistance is available there.
Yeah.
So one question from the audience has to do with evacuation drills. Fire Safe Marin and the Firewise communities were putting a big emphasis on this to try to get all of them to do something. Is there any chance that the Novato Fire District is going to be coordinating evacuation drills or exercises?
Absolutely. So we've got basically 2 drills on the same day currently planned. One of them is going to be a Black Point, which again is the neighborhood that we mentioned earlier. It's one way in, one way out. It's on the southeast side of Highway 37, just before you exit the county. And then the other one is going to be Pacheco Valley, because again, kind of the same model there. It's just one way into the neighborhood and one way out. So those are the 2 that are currently planned. I know there's been some smaller scale drills that have been, put in place by the community, and we totally support those. So if there's anybody from the community that's interested, have them reach out to me at jdicochea@novatofire.org, and we can try to put something together.
That's
the other thing I encourage everybody to do is sign up for Alert Marin. Please sign up for Alert Marin.
We're all about that. That's great. Yeah, can't stress that enough. Thank you. Some of the photos that were most impressive were the evacuation route clearance. The number one concern of every meeting I ever go to from residents is about evacuation. So over a period of several years, do you feel pretty confident that you'll be hitting all the priority areas like we saw out there in Black Point?
Absolutely. So we've kind of got a plan and a big master plan. We're going to start mapping some of these out. But the other thing that's really important to discuss is really the maintenance of some of these roads. We go in there today or tomorrow and actually do some really good work, but we got to make sure we maintain it in the next year or 2. And we've seen this at some of our, like Marin Valley Mobile Home Park. We've done a lot of vegetation management around that facility, and every other year we got to go back through with the goats and just do continual maintenance on some of those. So we'll have to do the same thing with the evacuation routes.
Yeah, like painting the Golden Gate Bridge, right?
Yeah, start on one end and turn around and come back.
Yeah, I think that some of the shaded fuel breaks that you're doing are very impressive. Can you give a little better idea of what a shaded fuel break is and what its function is?
Absolutely. So a shaded fuel break is basically, an area that might have kind of the rolling oaks, very similar to what we see throughout the county, with some, light flashy fuels underneath the oak trees. And what we want to do is we basically want to bring the canopy up a little bit. So we start limbing up around, 8 to 10 feet. And then we also want to take care of the ground level fuels. So, we have a lot of fires in the county. Most of the time they're just ground fires. So as they're moving across, they might just be burning the vegetation on the ground, which might only, give us 8 or 10 inch flame heights. However, once it hits that shaded fuel break, it really slows it down. It gives us an opportunity to catch that fire and keep it from spreading and turn it into a larger fire. So it just basically reduces the vegetation and some of that canopy, underneath some of that canopy.
Great. Sort of related to that, it's one thing to create a shaded fuel break. They're usually somewhat strategic, ridge tops and whatnot. What's the function of defensible space behind homes versus something like that?
Well, it's very similar, Rich. If you've got, use my home as an example. I live on 5 acres and the LNU fire burned across my home and property. And everything around my house, I've got about 3.5 acres, was basically down to bare mineral soil. So as we create these breaks, we're reducing the vegetation closest to your home. So when the LNU fire burned across my property, it burned about 1.5 acres, and it was the only part of the property that I had not mowed because I can't get my tractor back there. So very similar to some of these smaller parcels we see within Novato Fire District is taking care of that vegetation from your house out so that when that fire kind of burns through, there's no vegetation closest to your house, because you got to keep in mind that our homes can ignite. Our homes are a fuel source, they're a fuel load. So keeping that vegetation away keeps that fire from actually getting close to our home and igniting our home.
Yeah, the phrase house out, I've heard Chief Tyler use that quite a few times. Can you sort of explain what that means to the layperson?
Absolutely. The house out approach is something we're preaching here in Novato, and I think you're going to start seeing it, a lot, and it kind of falls in line with the zone 0 that we're talking about. So we focus on the home itself and hardening the home. And I'm going to start from the bottom to the top because I'm kind of systematic like that. So, looking at the roof, making sure it's non-combustible, putting some gutter guards on your gutters so that you don't have leaf litter in your gutters. Looking at the vents and make sure you've got small vents, 1/8 of an inch or smaller, so that embers cannot get into your attic or down into your basement vents. Look at the siding, make sure we've got non-combustible siding. Looking at the windows, making sure they're dual pane tempered windows. They're wildland urban interface compliant. And then, once you get kind of down to the ground level, is really start moving out, making sure that if you do have a fence and a gate that contacts your home, that the first 5 feet are some kind of non-combustible material, because we've seen in many, many fires where fences have burned, and that's actually what caught the house on fire. And then again, as we move away from the home outside of that first 5 feet, then kind of reducing the vegetation, make sure it's sparse, make sure we keep our grasses mowed down, and so on and so forth. So.
Great. Well, I think that's a really good philosophy, and I think we're all trying to get on board with that. One of the questions from the public is, as you pointed out, for the most part, when you're doing the chipper program, the chips are loaded in the truck and then they're taken for disposal. What do you think about homeowners who might want to have some of those chips put on their property for various reasons? Is that safe? Is it not safe?
It really depends on the size of the chips, because, as we go out and we educate the public on, what to put in their yards for landscaping, one of the things we don't recommend is, the really fine kind of ground covers, like, I think the slang term is gorilla hair. And if you look at some of that stuff and it shreds real easy in your hand, that stuff is easily ignitable. Once you start getting into the bigger chips, and, basically it's bigger pieces of wood and they don't ignite as easily. Of course, over time they do dry out and stuff like that, but they also decompose into the ground. So if you're going to put any kind of wood chips down, we recommend using the larger ones.
Right. And that's not necessarily a uniform chip coming out of the chipper trucks, right? Yeah, it's going to be all over the place.
No. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Another thing that we talk a lot about, and we haven't got to it yet, but red flag days.
Yes.
And as we kind of say, it's hard to be at the height of preparedness every single day of the year, but I think red flags are important. What does the Novato Fire District do that would be unique for red flag days?
So we do a couple things. We have a policy, an internal policy. So anytime there's a red flag day, our deputy chief will send out an email and a text in our text group to all the battalion chiefs and kind of give us a heads up. And, we know way ahead of time that there's going to be a red flag event coming. So we do a couple things. Is we notify the public, we'll post stuff on social media. We've got our 2 sign trailers that we'll put out in the public just to let them know that it is red flag. We try to put stuff on social media and just post some awareness stuff. And then the other big thing that we do is if we have the staffing, we'll try to upstaff an extra fire engine or two. If we don't have the staffing, then a lot of the times we just upstaff a utility pickup so that they could be support. And that could be support for the incident, that could be support for the public. A lot of the times, just I've actually personally done it during fires up in Santa Rosa. I was in a utility pickup and I actually responded up to Santa Rosa. So again, that's just support for the incident, support for the fire district, and support for the public. And a lot of the times we're just driving around and kind of looking for stuff, making sure that, people aren't out there mowing and weed whacking on those red flag days with metal blade weed whackers and stuff like that. So those are just a few of the things that we do.
Well, that's an important time, and that's the time where you really want to have the radio next to you so you get your alert Marin warnings and all the rest of that. So I've got two last questions for you. When you look back over the past, I'll say fiscal year, because that's the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority, the funding is July 1st to July 1st. Is there one particular thing that you're most proud of that was done in Novato?
Absolutely. It's tough to answer that question because I'm really proud of all the work that we've done here, and I'm proud of all of our employees. But we just ran the numbers this morning for our matching grant program, and I got to look up at my wall, and I'm gonna smile because from July of 2020 to last month, we've handed out $1.487 million in matching grants. So almost $1.5 million, which sounds like a big number, but the bigger number is the amount of work that's being done in the public. So remember, that's a 50 cent on the dollar matching grant. So they've done at least $3 million, and more than likely closer to probably 4 or 5 million. Some of these big projects that folks are doing in the community, may cost $50,000 to $60,000 for windows and siding, and they're only getting $5,000 from us. But I think we're doing some really good work in the community. We're hardening homes, really teaching that house out approach, and really having a big positive effect within our community.
Wow, that is really impressive. I thought I kept up on things, but I didn't. That's a good number to report out.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
So here's the last question. Anything coming up in the next fiscal year that you're excited about?
Oh, wow. Yes. So Mike Swayze, we hired a vegetation management manager. Vegetation management program manager is his official title. And Mike Swayze is a forester. He retired from the watershed. And he's very well known in the community. He's got lots of experience doing vegetation management and, a lot of prescription stuff. And so we hired him. He came out of retirement to really help us out and build our program. So he's really, really building our program. We've got, the work that he's doing, the fire breaks, we've got the evacuation route clearing. A big long-term project that he's kind of planning is going to be basically a fuel break around the entire Novato Fire District. Our chipper program, that's really part of that. So those are all those things. And we're looking to hire an assistant for him because he is so busy. And I'll give you one example of how busy he is. This morning, he came into work and he says, I've got 3 crews doing work at 3 different sites. And then I ran into him in the office here about an hour later. And he goes, oh, I forgot about one of the crews. I've actually got 4 crews working out in the field. So on any given day, he might have 4 or 5 crews out there. And they're always doing work, whether it's, biological assessments, bird nesting surveys. So we're making sure that, we're not going out there and just start cutting things down. So the work that Mike Swayze is doing is phenomenal. And I can't say enough good things about that. So really having a big impact on the community.
And I know Mike, and I know the philosophy of the Novato Fire Department, and really all the Marin fire departments. You brought up at the end something I meant to touch on earlier, and that is all of this work that's being done, these fuel management projects and whatnot. I take it as being done with strict compliance to the best environmental practices.
Absolutely. So, we work hand in hand with MWPA. We work with a couple contractors that are doing environmental compliance for us. They're doing bird nesting surveys. Just today, we had crews here at our office that I'm standing inside of. So they're doing some clearing of vegetation around the freeway side and around the back side of our office here. And, we brought in surveyors to come in here and survey for birds because we've got a creek right behind our building here. So we want to make sure that we're being, environmentally friendly, we're being compliant. And, we don't want to just go in there and start cutting trees down where they've got nesting birds. So we're being very careful. And, we're friends to the environment, so we want to make sure we're being, good neighbors to our friends.
Oh, that's great. Well, John, I can't thank you enough. Is there anything you'd like to add in closing?
I just want to thank Fire Safe Marin, MWPA, and the community for really supporting us. I think the community has really embraced this program. We've got some community leaders out there that have really spread the word. They work with us all the time. This is a tough time of the year for us because, this is kind of the beginning of wildland season, and we've had a lot of fires throughout the northern part of the state, some small, some big. Southern California is burning. So the awareness level of our community members is really high right now. So we are extremely busy right now from the vegetation management side and the home assessment side. So thank you to the community for supporting us, for being patient with us, and thank you for continuing to use the program, because at the end of the day, we just want to reinvest back into the community. So thank you.
Well, thanks to you, John, and all the great work that's being done by Novato Fire District. You guys have been wonderful partners with us, and we look forward to continuing all that. And thank you to the members of the audience for taking the time to participate. We really do appreciate it. We did record this, and the recording will be available to the public. We'll also be creating a little bit of a highlight reel, because we're doing 5 of these webinars, and together we're going to sort of blend them together to give a little bit of big perspective on what Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority has accomplished during the year. But again, thanks to you and the great work done by Chief Tyler and the whole team up there, John. Appreciate it very much.
Great. Thank you, Rich.
All right. Good night, everybody.